my job is to somehow make them curious enough or persuade them by hook or crook to get more aware of themselves and where they came from and what they are into and what is already there, and just to bring it out. This is what compels me to compel them, and I will do it by whatever means necessary.
Welcome to the Awesome Black Dad Show, where our goal is to educate, inspire, and encourage dads to become the best version of themselves. Today we got a good one, people. I'm excited about it. I've been interested in having a conversation about masculinity and toxic masculinity and fatherhood and all these things wrapped together. I've been having it with conversations with my brothers a lot, but we thought that we couldn't have these conversations anymore in a vacuum, right? So I thought it'd be really good and dope to bring in some friends of the show, some really good, solid friends of mine from high school, Tiffany Barefield and Nikki Bruce, two awesome women in their own right. And I don't even want to, I think that I would pass the mic over to them to give a bit of an introduction as to who they are and what they're about. Tiff, you can go ahead.
Sure, I am Tiff B. Y'all can call me that. All of us are Providence St. Mel alums, class of '97.
Yeah.
So we come, coming from the West Side, we coming with a realness, and I am a investigator. I work for the city of Chicago. I'm right now in law school, pursuing a degree in civil rights law. So, and I like to talk my shit. So I do, I also have my own podcast, Pardon My Ugly. But we've been having strong, deep conversations and discussions since high school. So I'm ready to tackle this conversation from a woman's perspective.
Awesome sauce. My name is Nikki B. I'm a bit of everything, modern day Renaissance woman. For the majority of my day, I am a creative. I develop after school programs, after school initiatives, youth development initiatives to keep young people engaged in school education and overall helping them to build a better life for themselves, which is the basic fundamentals, right? So I spend a lot of time with young people, young men, young women, their parents. Right now, things are different right now, so I'm stretching myself to discover new ways to engage them virtually and remote. And that is a challenge, but I really enjoy it. Outside of that, I am a photographer, a Black woman photographer. I truly enjoy creating. And man, I'm just happy to be on the show. Really am. Thank you for the invite.
No, absolutely. We're happy to have you. We happy to have you. And they are, Tiffany and Nikki are true girlfriends off of the air, right? Yeah. They hang out, travel together, and do all those good things. So we definitely thought it'd be awesome to have them on, because I know even though they keep each other honest, they also back each other up. So it should be a fun show for sure. So basically, getting into the show, but before we get into the show, what my co-host and I had decided to do as a part of these shows is it's very important for us to begin to pat each other on the back, right? And recognize men and fathers that are doing good in their homes and in the communities and things of that nature. So every show, we try our best to give a salute, an awesome salute to a dad that's doing good things, and it doesn't have to be these grandiose things. It could just be, it could be the smallest things, because sometimes the small things are what really matter. And so this week, we want to really give a salute to Jacob Blake and his family, actually, with what's going on, what happened in Kenosha. We're praying for that situation. I'm very disheartened by that situation and everything that's going on within our community and us as it pertains to who the police that are supposed to protect us. I'm glad that Jacob he's alive, right? And so that's one thing that we can definitely clap for if we can do that type of thing. But unfortunately, it sounds like that he may not be able to walk again. But we're hoping and praying that the brother comes out of it, and he's able to walk and talk and stand tall from this, and be able to share and tell his story. So to that, we give Jacob Blake and his family an awesome salute, and we hope and pray that they come out of this unscathed. Yep.
Salutations.
Yeah.
Salutations.
Absolutely.
Can I give a salute?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Tiff.
I mean, because I have watched you and Jarrell grow up from boys to men. You know what I'm saying? I have watched this happen before my eyes. I remember.
Don't you do that.
Goofball ass motherfucker. That's my language. No, seriously, let me be serious. Amazing guys in school, even more amazing now as adults. I am so proud of the men that both of you become. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here. This is something that I've observed. I would say the majority of the guys that the crew, right? Everybody turned out really amazing. A lot of growth, you know what I'm saying, that I've watched before my eyes. So salute you guys, seriously, Jarrell and Terrell, for like being amazing men, being amazing fathers, being amazing contributors to our community. I love it. Like, man, salute.
No, yeah. I appreciate that, Tiffany. That somebody's watching.
You made me use my face mask as a tweet.
I mean that, man. I've seen you guys grow. I mean, literally, man. You know what I'm saying? And it was beautiful. It's been beautiful to see.
No, I appreciate that. We definitely appreciate that. Thank you. So what we want to get into today is what we've had conversations about masculinity together as a group, not recorded, half-heartedly. But what, I really, really want to kind of get deep into the ideas of masculinity and fatherhood, manhood, and all those things, and your perspective on them, right? And I'll just give you a bit of the backstory in terms of how we ended up here and why we wanted to have this show. So recently, probably over about a month ago, and prior to a month ago, I had read the About Us page for the Black Lives Matter movement, right? Or the organization. Shouldn't say the movement. I believe that those things are, they can be two different things, right? But looking at the organization, went to the About Us page and read the About Us page, and I was pretty. Back then, I had posted something on Facebook, and this was probably maybe a year and a half ago, about like being confused about some of the things that I was reading, didn't understand the context, and it just kind of confused me. Kind of let that go, and then went back to it recently, probably about a month ago, and yes, I'm still confused. There's a couple of excerpts in that About Us, or what we believe, that really kind of, maybe I misunderstand and kind of concern me, and we'll get into that as well, but that's kind of how then Jarrell and I started. I sent it to him, and he's like, "Well, wait, what? We need somebody to come in and tell us how they feel and what to give us a different.
Too much testosterone.
Yeah,
we think,
because we just
need some estrogen.
Yeah, we absolutely did not understand what was going on there. So I'd like to really kind of start off I know what Jarrell's perspective is on masculinity and toxic masculinity, and he knows what my beliefs are and ideals are from that. We want to hear your perspective, right? So what are your ideas and perspectives on what is masculinity? And feel free to definitely throw your experiences in there as well. And then we'll get back to the About Us and what we believe.
I'll let you hit it first, Nick.
You bogus.
You weren't ready.
Expecting that. Masculinity. That's a big topic, right? Mm-hmm. So I read it too. I did go and read the About Us page for Black Lives Matter. And as I read it, I could understand where people could get offended by the language. However, when you read the whole thing and you look at the name of the organization, it makes sense. If I'm saying Black Lives Matter, I have to include every subculture, I don't even know what to describe it as, but every subculture has to be included in that. And I think they do a great job with their writing to make sure that they're inclusive of every subculture, regardless of what it is, as long as you're Black or brown, right? As far as the idea of masculinity.
Hey, Nikki, we're getting a little bit of feedback on your end. I don't know if that's like your speaker or something, if you can. I'm sorry I didn't mean to cut you off because you was getting into it.
I'm gonna turn my speaker down. Is that better?
Yeah, absolutely. That works.
It's better.
Yeah.
So when I think of masculinity, I do think of some of the fundamental ideas that I got as a child, right? Like understanding what a man was. I think where we are now is there's a huge number of free thinkers. People are looking at things a lot differently. They're being very self-aware. They're being very unapologetic. And I think what happens is when people start to challenge some of the fundamental ideas that you're born with, that you're raised with, then it causes people to be alarmed. It causes some type of fear that, hey, wait a minute, this is infringing upon everything that I was taught as a child. You know, classic example is just going out to dinner and seeing a woman today. I was at Buffalo Wild Wings, and she's like carrying the baby in the carrier, and she's got 3 kids with her. No man is seen, you know. But as a woman seeing that, I see her strength, and sometimes that strength can be defined as masculinity. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I saw where there could be some issues with language, but I feel like overall they had to do that in order to be completely inclusive. And to say that we don't live in a patriarchal society would be naive for anybody to say that. It is. It's very much real. And now I think the last several years you've seen so many movements, right? And a part of those movements are women becoming more stronger and more confident in their ability to be a woman, and to carry both of those attributes very well. I don't think it's to discount men, but however, I do feel that men in general have to be accountable for their displacement in families and in society, for their role in creating that. If you look at the average single family home, it's like 80% families is like single parent homes now, so what part of that are our men going to be accountable for in saying, hey, let me check some of my brothers, because they're not there, and their absence creates this kind of image that that men are not needed. I don't think it's per se women. I mean, some women will bash a man in a minute, but I don't personally think that it's intentional. You know what I mean? I think that that's something that men have collectively over the years. They've created that monster, and the chickens have come home to roost.
Well,
What is that?
amen.
Yep.
How we doing?
Yeah, no, y'all. I'm letting y'all go. I'm letting you go. I wanted to cut you off a bunch of times, but I'm working on me.
Okay. I didn't know what the dynamic was. I didn't know if you guys wanted to respond to what she said and then have me talk.
Oh no, go ahead. We'll break it up. We'll get in. We'll definitely get into it. But what I really want the audience to get is a clear picture of where you ladies stand, right? And I don't want to get into cutting you off because I know we're gonna get there. We're gonna get to the place to where it's like, nah. I really want the audience to hear what it is, how you feel, and what you think.
So, I mean, Nikki made a lot of points that I would have wanted to make, very excellent points. One of the things that she stated was, kind of this reaction that people have been having to conversations about patriarchy and toxic masculinity, or just masculinity within itself. And men kind of being, like you say, appalled and kind of taken aback. And I was thinking about this earlier today, and it's like, okay, as, I think back on our parents' time and then their parents, as decades and centuries have passed, our world and our society has evolved, you know what I'm saying? And so things that were normal at one point, 2020 is completely abnormal now. Some of that is natural evolution. Some of that is revolution. Right. And that revolution is necessary at times because natural evolution is not getting us to the place that we want. So we got to fight for it. And so, and it's not always a negative thing, but at the time, revolution is never accepted when it's happening. It's always going to be fought against. But in hindsight, when you get years down the line, it's highly regarded in history books or whatever the case may be. So, and I've always talked about how I've noticed when women talking about the issues that we deal with within a patriarchal society, and the discrimination that let me take discrimination out, the oppression that we receive from being in that society. We get the same type of responses like when we talking to white people about racism. We get those same exact reactions from Black men. So we only talking from a Black woman perspective. Mm-hmm. Right? I can't talk from a white or Hispanic. We talking from a Black woman. As Black women, when we're talking to our men about the things that we go through that are specific to us, mm-hmm. we get them same whataboutisms, as I call it, that same gaslighting tactic that white people use when we talking to them about racism, because it's a revolution. It's a different way of looking at something. It's an uprooting of what's always been, and the natural reaction is to fight against it or get defensive. So I know we'll go further later about the BLM What About Us page, and I believe, but I think that's what's going on there. Mm-hmm. I think that it's not a way to remove masculinity or remove the men. It's just to show that, you know, this is a whole different way we're going to start moving. You know, in past civil rights movements, it's always been a Black man as the face of it. And it's always a lot of times focused on the issues that Black men go through. And a lot of times the issues that women go through, or whatever subgroup, as Nikki stated, kind of gets put on the back burner. Mm-hmm. And now as we've evolved, and now we got all, you know, we got LGBTQ, you got all kinds of issues. They're saying no, you know, and we're going to put that on the forefront because we want to be very direct about what it is that we represent. That's not to take nothing away from men, but we just want to make sure, because it's never ever been done before. It should be clear that they're about Black men, because everything they done put their name behind has been about Black men. So that, you know, I think it's just you know, it shouldn't be taken the way that it's been taken. But just in general, the masculinity conversation, and we can get into it. I don't know what direction you guys want to go with it, because I did want to talk about the toxic masculinity thing, but I don't think we've actually set up.
Yeah, we've actually broached that section.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll wait to give my comments on that. That's just my baseline viewpoint of that.
Sure.
Can I just add really, really quick?
Yeah.
I think it's important to always see all of the fights, all of the revolutions, right? So you have women who are becoming very outspoken about oppressions, about, you know, their feelings. But you also had a whole subculture of LGBTQ transgendered people who are saying, I don't want to be identified anymore by what you think my sexuality is. And that goes back to me talking about how you were fundamentally raised. You know, you were raised to see a person's color, their sexuality, and what else? That's the two majors.
Yeah.
Well, here's where I'll interject there, Nikki. For sure, we were raised to look at color, and I for one, I don't believe that. I personally don't have an issue with that. Right? I think that it's the reality of the situation. I think that whatever you decide, you can call me black, blue, orange, or yellow. I am a different color than a Latino. Right? My ethnicity just calls for it. Based on where I was raised and where I grew up and the parents that I came from, my color is different. So I do see color. That is not that's not a big thing. Now, where I kind of disagree with the whole sexuality thing, I think it's more gender than sexuality. And maybe those two things blend, right? We were raised to know that that's a boy and a girl. And that
Touche.
Yeah,
you're right.
I do not disagree with that mind state. Whether you call it a cat or a dog,
yeah.
I was born with an outie, you were born with an innie, right? At the end of the day, you can call it what you want. That is what that is how we were made. Now, when you get into a discussion about what what people decide to, the sexuality of it all, then yeah, there's a broad spectrum of things that we can have a conversation about that then leaks over into religion and spirituality and norms, right? Not just hetero norms, but just norms in general, natural norms, right? So that's an entirely different, but I think one of the reasons I really wanted to have this conversation is because people throw these terms out, specifically toxic masculinity, and it categorizes everything that is associated with a male, right? In my opinion, coming from a man, when I hear toxic masculinity and something that could be simply called aggressive behavior, you begin to wrap that behavior into one, and you confuse people. So now you've tied toxic masculinity to aggressive behavior, right? Because to be honest, when it comes to women, and a lot of my experience in dating women want to date, they want to date men that have masculine characteristics, right? Mm-hmm. And so there is a line. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a line where dudes overcompensate and do things that are just way too much, and we'll call dudes out on that just as well. But when we start playing with these terms about toxic masculinity, you begin to cover all of men, right? And here's an example of what I mean. When it comes to let's talk about the not child support, but why am I drawing a blank on
public aid?
Public aid. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you. Public aid, right? Where systematically public aid forced men to be, for a woman to get public aid in that situation, the man had to be outside of the home, right? And so that was the inception of devaluing a man, among other things, systematically, right? And so when you start characterizing these things, and that's what it becomes, then the nature of women are raised to think that, girl, you don't need him.
Yeah, but that's kind of
I'm sorry, go ahead, friend.
Yeah, that's kind of a egg before the chicken kind of situation, right? Because the reason that those programs were put in place was because there were a trend, a pattern of women not having the support of the fathers in situations. So a lot of programs started as a response to something that was going on in society. And that's not to say if it's wrong or right, but that's what happened. And you're right. Unfortunately, the negative, I guess, what's the word, that comes out of that, you know what I'm saying? It's always going to be a pro. That's the thing that came out of it.
Right, but that was predominantly...
It turned into a lot of women feeling like, well, I don't need a man because I can just rely on the government. But I don't think that that's a national, like a consistent, because I don't know a lot of women that are on public aid or depending on the government. I know a lot of women that's out here doing their thing for themselves. So I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but I don't think that's like the overwhelming number.
But I think we're talking about the support of the way the government supports, because there were two public aids when it all first started. There were one for the city and there was one for the rural, for the farmers. But for the farmers, the fathers could be there. You understand what I'm saying? So for the city folk, they made it to where you could not have a father in the house, which specifically was targeting blacks and Latinos, right? Because, and what we're trying to say is that the governmental part, we're not trying to say that, the women, it made the women believe that they don't need a man. We're saying that the government and the system was forcing the man to not be needed.
Right. So they subsidized
that. The government was pretty much stepping in and say, hey,
we'll be your man.
House.
That's a stretch. Wait, that's a stretch. I'll give you the fact that yes, it was a government and systematical way of oppressing people. Right, and creating poverty and continuing to have poverty, right? I'll give you that. However, there were men not in the household prior to that, right? And we can go back. I mean, if you're going to say public aid started it, I'll come back and say slavery started it. right? The dehumanization of slaves, of Black people. So we got deep roots where men not being in the household. I think the problem is that men as a whole have never come together to understand that they are needed and to stick around. You got young families now with no father in the home. So this is becoming a generational curse. You know, you have a child who has a child at 16. Her mother had her at 16. Her mother had her at 16, and none of them had their father in the house. So when do men, regardless of the public aid, say you can't live in the house? You can still contribute. You can still come pick up your child and spend time and instill values and morals and ethics into your child. You can still help that mother. If there's situations where y'all not getting along, there's still a way. I know brothers who have really fought to be in their child's life. I just had a conversation with a brother the other day. He's with his baby mother. They live together. They're raising their child together. And I said, you know, his baby just turned 1. I'm like, how does it feel? This is his first child. I'm like, how does it feel to be a father? He was like, you know what? I love it. I wouldn't trade it in the world. I've learned so much. It's made me a better man. He's like, but you know, the one thing that really fucks with me, Nikki, is I don't understand how a man cannot be in his child's life. This is my first child, and I'll never leave my daughter.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I'll give you that. And so what I want to be clear about is we're not suggesting that every man on the face of the earth is doing, you know, what they're supposed to be doing. There are some guys out here that are not doing exactly what they should be and taking care of their responsibility. But and I don't want to go too far into this topic. We want to kind of bring it back to the whole masculinity topic and subject and get into the BLM. What about us? But when you talk about systematic control, these things begin to break the family structure down, right? For the people that for the men that didn't have a father in their life prior, but they're really trying to work it out and figure it out. You can't, what did you tell me last week, Real? You can't teach somebody something that they've never
think they already know,
that they didn't already know, right? And so you can't.
Okay.
You can't blame them. You can't blame somebody for something that they had no exposure to, and they didn't know anything about it, right? And so the guy that didn't have a father in his life prior, right, decides to have a child, and now he's trying to figure it out, and he has to go over these hurdles. And in this system, the system is set up to help and encourage some women to devalue a man, right? And so that's what I'm talking about. When we talk about some of the systematic issues, these things are set up not to encourage dads to be in the house, but to, you know, that family structure to break it down, right? And so that's how we,
I can see that, but like I was saying, I don't think that it's the way that it was initially worded was as if those systems were put in place to push the man out, and I don't think that's what happened. I think those programs started because the trend was starting. There was a lot of women raising kids by themselves, and they didn't have the support. And you got to remember, back at a certain time, women were completely dependent on men. You know what I'm saying? Because the men were the ones who were the providers, and the women stay home with the kids. And when the men started leaving the household, the women were stuck raising these kids, and they didn't have any money to do so. So then these programs, child support, public aid, all of that stuff came out of that. Now, like Nikki said, we can get to the root of that. That's not even trying to blame the men. It could be other things that kept the men out of the house. You know, we could go even further, but nevertheless, but I do agree. I think the negative result was that men did started to get devalued. I agree
over
with
time.
that.
Over time. I understand that some of the policies may have been put in place for a specific reason, but when you think about when this stuff happens and how it was targeted, just like redlining in Chicago, how it's targeted to Black and brown communities, you begin to see how it is systematically breaking us down. Because when you think about it, a family structure, dual incomes, I won't say rule the world, but when you have a family structure coming together, when you have two people in the house, two adults in the house working together to make it work, to live and survive, you have a better chance, right? There's statistics that say that when fathers are in the household, or when there's a positive male role model in the household, that kid has a better chance of finishing college, going off and being something and doing something, right? And so when you begin to break it down, you take away the idiots of the world, right? The dudes that you can't talk to because they just have traumatic issues going on in their life, and you look at the programs and the systems that are set up for these family structures to fail, specifically for Black and brown folk, it's problematic, right? And so to push it over to BLM, one of the reasons why I find some of the language problematic, because I specifically feel like it speaks to some of the devaluing of the man in the family structure. And I'll read an excerpt, right, that led me to believe that. So it says, we make, and I need for you guys to explain, maybe my context is completely off. My experiences have allowed me to just be, living in this patriarchal world. I can't come down off of my high horse. Maybe y'all can help me.
The male privilege speech.
Right, here we go with the male privilege. But yeah, so here's the excerpt, right? So it says, we make our spaces family friendly and enable parents to fully participate with their children. We dismantle the patriarchal practice that requires mothers to work double shifts so that they can mother in private, even as they participate in public justice work, right? I will actually go on and read the next piece too, because that's included in my confusion. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another, especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable, right? And so that last piece stood out to me because they found a way to include, to make you feel like they're being inclusive. So they say, to the degree that mothers, parents, where's fathers? In that excerpt, right? And so it's like, that is deliberate to me, right? That is a deliberate call out that, like, okay, mothers and then parents. And from that perspective, here's what I took from the mothers and parents, right? So they wanted to, because the women that started the Black Lives Matter organization are a part of the don't kill me. The LGBTQT.
It's a whole the alphabet. It's
right.
A whole
I'm not gonna say the alphabet people. I ain't Dave Chappelle. I don't have enough money where I could just, you can cancel me and I can still spend some money. But yeah, it just made me feel like that they were being inclusive with parents, because parents can technically be anything, right? Mm-hmm. Or not anything, but any form of people, whether it's two women, two men, a man and a woman. And so, there's no mention of father. And so why? Why is that exclusion so specific when it comes to, when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, right? And that's what in my opinion, that's what it should be. When we're talking about that, when I hear Black Lives Matter, I'm not asking you about your sexuality. I'm not asking you about your gender. What race of people are you being categorized as in the United States of America? Black, period. You're in. You are part of this. Or now, don't get me wrong. We do have some things that we have to, we got to come inside the house and we got to have some conversations about to fix internally. But when we talking to people outside and we want to be a unified folk, like we all Black. Like, I'm not asking you like who you slept with last night. Right. It doesn't matter.
You said, it's supposed to be inclusive because those groups of people have historically not been included when it's time to sit down and have conversations and talk to leaders and politicians and get laws passed. A lot of times their needs specifically are being excluded. Now, I'll give you that on that last excerpt, Terrell. I do think it's a little odd that they would exclude fathers there. So I'll give you that. And I can't answer to why they did that. But the first excerpt, I didn't take anything away from that. I think, like we stated earlier, that it was just a way to be very inclusive and very direct with that inclusive language.
Okay. I'll be more specific from the first excerpt where I got confused. So this is what confused me. We dismantled the patriarchal practice that requires mothers to work double shifts so that they can mother in private, even as they participate in public justice work. What part of the patriarchal practice requires moms to work a double shift? Like, what does that literally mean?
I think what they mean is you got all these women that are single mothers, but they're working their ass off and they don't have time to spend with their kids. And so then the streets are raising their kids. And I think that's kind of what they were taught. At least that's how I took it.
But what?
I mean, they were very specific.
Patriarchal would mean that the father is there.
Right? That's not what patriarchal means.
What?
A patriarchal society is a male-dominated society. That's what patriarchy is, and it's not just the United States. It is permeated the entire world. And that's a very male-dominated and a very male-dominated view, which means that men's needs always come first, and the world is built around the needs of men. And so that's what that patriarchal society means. And they're trying to say, like women, we had to fight to get certain rights to be off of work because they giving birth, birth control, all of that type of shit that men are trying to make decisions about that's dealing with our bodies and our situations, and nobody's been there to make those arguments for us, and I don't want to talk too long, but Terrell, but I think sometimes you guys need to put some things in perspective, right? We know that the Black man, I don't think there's a woman out here that don't understand your plight, and we've been there to support you guys from day one. However, the support hasn't also been given back. There was a time they gave men, Black men, the right to vote. It took 50 years, women. I'm talking about all women. So that means they gave Black men the right to vote before they gave their own women the right to vote. That's how devalued a woman is. So now y'all come crying about how y'all devalue. How the fuck y'all think we've been feeling for centuries? So yeah, we're coming out strong with our voice right now. You know what I'm saying? So that's what that means. So it's like, and like I say, it's very similar if you put yourself in the mindset of the person that's dealing with racism in a racist society, and how you view things of always being oppressed. So now we knocking on the motherfucking door. We ain't silent no more. We coming hard. So Black men had this right. In 50 years, I ain't heard about no Black man fighting for Black women to get the right to vote. I didn't hear about no Black man fighting for Black women to get this. I mean, I could just go down the list of the things that we were not receiving, and Black men wasn't fighting for that for us. They were fighting in general, right? So I'm not taking nothing away from the fight, but there were certain specifics that we weren't getting, because once they got it, they moved on to the next thing. They said, "Fuck us."
Well, that's harsh.
I speak harshly, but
that is harsh. I wouldn't say that, because I would say
you're right. I need to be language. You know how I talk, y'all know me.
No, I get it, Tiff. But let's also not forget that in the time that you were talking about, the black family was more of a cohesive unit, right? And I'm not suggesting that if you saw fences, I'm not suggesting that there wasn't trauma in these black households, right? Because we had a lot of trauma in our lineage. But back during that time, we were more of it was more of a collective, right? And so I think, and I can't speak for our ancestors, but it was like you take the wins that you could get. Right. And I'm not diminishing women. I am not standing. I'm not standing in that. Is that what it sounds like? Do I need to watch my language?
I mean, it
because
let's call it what it is.
No, because for what I'm saying,
right, and y'all didn't fight to get us that right neither.
No,
you know
I think
there could be a myriad of reasons why that happened. You know what I'm saying? But that was the reality.
Yeah, but I think also even now today, a lot of men there are a lot of men that come home to their wives, and they get information to make moves from their wives. And so I'd imagine back then when they were coming home having these conversations, their wives had as much input into what they was doing. But I guess I digress, right?
I also think that was behind closed doors.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter. It's
right.
The idea that, Black men who are really about loving their women, they'll give us kudos, but they're going to give us kudos behind closed doors. You're not going to give me my praise and my worship and glorify me in public, because in public, you got to come off like the man leading the family. And that goes back to these fundamental beliefs that are instilled. And I think we are seeing, as free thinkers, you know, is listen, we want to break that down. Like, because men are not the only men that are in power. Now there are women in power. There are women in power in households. There are women in power in careers. There are women empowered in sports. Like, recognize us.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you as far as the last point of them not including fathers. I will say, looking at the source and looking at the fact that they are being inclusive, I'm not making an excuse for them, but I feel like that is why the wording is the way it is. It's because when you have pretty much another movement with inside a movement, you know,
which is scary to me. I would agree.
And that's when you get that, for real.
Yes.
Is there, but there's so many different ones, because if you continue to read, they also support Black disabled. They also support Black elders, and they go into in-depth of that. You know, so there's all these inclusive things that I feel like they have to mention, right? You can't, because otherwise if they say Black Lives Matter, and then for instance, the transgender person who got beat and assaulted, you know, if they don't include that person who is Black, then how does Black Lives Matter?
Right.
So go ahead.
No, I hear what you're saying.
Don't hurt me, Cheryl. Don't hurt me.
No, I hear what you're saying, but it scares me because you have that movement. You have that movement within a movement within a movement, right? And as a Black person that subscribes to the Black Lives Matter movement, mm-hmm. if I decide to put my finances or even my time behind the movement, the people who are running this organization, if they have a separate agenda within this language, and when you look at the contract, you can see all the bold words at the top of what they tell you to pay attention to. The fine print, right? Yeah. And so as we're reading this, the Black Lives Matter movement and organization is very polarizing, right? So you can get, much like probably a lot of us, when you hear Black Lives Matter, you don't think about the organization, you just think about the movement. And so you want to pour your, you know, whatever you have into that, whether it's conversation, whether it's finance, whether it's time, you're pouring it into that, not really knowing and understanding what the real agenda is. And at the end of the day, when you look 10 years down the line, you recognize that, and I'm going to go on a stretch and say, what happened to masculinity, right? Because as we start to look at some of these things and you start to dismantle some of the practices associated with being a man or a father in the household, it gets dismissed. And over time, it goes away, right?
I don't think it's getting dismissed.
But it is in the language. When you read some of the language, not the entire list, but when you get to some of it, you're just like, well, what are they getting at? What are they going to use their funds for? Because that's what, when you talk about somebody's beliefs, you're
mm-hmm.
like, well, wait, if that's what you believe, when you get some money, then you're going to put your money toward where your mouth is, right?
Yeah, but I guess why I say that is mm-hmm. because, again, going back to free thinkers and all of the movements, I will agree and go on record and say that there is a dismantling of masculinity. I wouldn't go and say that masculinity is directed towards men. However, it is, but it's the dismantling of it so that others can be included in it. Example, as a woman, I may feel more masculine than I do feminine. It does not mean that I think that I'm a man, but it means that I do have attributes that I feel are more masculine than a woman, than the feminine that I may have. You see what I'm saying? So I'm only saying that to say that that's an example of how I think free thinkers are trying to dismantle masculinity so that it is inclusive. And again, I want you to reference who wrote this, because you stated that they are two women who are from the LGBTQ community. Mm-hmm. So this would be a conversation that could be eye-opening for them, because as they're fighting for this, these certain rights and this certain dismissiveness of norms that we know, right? They could be stepping on toes, and actually they did step on toes. They stepped on Black fathers. So I think it's a conversation that needs to be had with them to kind of just say, okay, yeah, you missed fathers. And all of that of what you're trying to do and be inclusive, I get that, but you missed the Black fathers.
Right. So what you just said.
Oh, go ahead.
No, what you just said, Nikki, one of the things that you just said, I kind of want to, I want to address, because it's interesting to me. Right. When you said that there are certain qualities about you that you would identify as being masculine, right, and not necessarily feminine, and wanting to get away from that and be more broad, right? And so basically saying that anybody can be masculine and anybody can be feminine, right? And there's no issues with it at all, right?
I wouldn't say that. There are issues with it.
Okay. Okay.
There are issues with
okay.
it. I'm not
there are issues. Okay.
But what I'm saying is, you know, I can only speak for myself as a woman who has been in a lesbian relationship, right? I'll go out and put my business out there. I do have a masculine side, you know, and I'm going to keep referencing the source. Who wrote this? All right. So my tidbit to you is that, yes, there is certain parts of me that feels more masculine. And I feel like that there are people in the GLBTQ who are trying to come as free thinkers and say, we just want to dismantle what masculinity is tied to. It's not necessarily tied to a man. Because if you look at it, not just transgender GLBTQ, but there are women who may not identify as masculine, but the shit they do in the household is masculine as hell. Right. If you want to keep it to a man, there's women taking trash out, doing, you know, working 3-4 jobs, the breadwinner, all of that. So if you want to, you know, we can go back and forth on that. But
I can add to that. I think, and this is going to go back to the conversation about the toxic masculinity, right? I think that the free thinking approach that Nikki is talking about is also going to be beneficial to men, because there has been a toxic attributes that have been pushed onto men that a lot of men reject and they feel a certain way about. Like, why can't I cry? Why can't I express my feelings? Why am I being raised and told that men have to suppress their feelings and they can never express them? So I think that's a lot of what that toxic masculinity and all of that talk is about, is to break all that down, because that hasn't been fair to men either.
Especially young ones, right? Your young men, me working with young men, they're so desensitized to their emotions. They won't touch their emotions. They will be reckless. They will make decisions just from the top of their head. But when it's time to sit down and I want to sit with them and talk to them about why they made those decisions, if they get emotional, you see them block that. And I've had young men say, Miss Nikki, I only feel comfortable crying with you. I can't cry in front of my mama. She called me a bitch. I can't cry in front of my daddy because he called me a bitch. This is
well, that's just toxic. That's just toxic. But go ahead, Real.
I think coming from a very masculine father, I think that it's not really about telling our young male sons, if you will, not to be emotional. I think we're saying not to be emotional to the point where you're mimicking, where your actions begin to mimic a female, for instance.
See, that's
Let me get it clear. What y'all think about these guys wearing little tight jeans? Where did the tight jeans start? They started with females, right? Now men are getting their hair done. Started with females. All I'm saying, now men are out I was in Walmart. I was about to snizzap. For the last several years, Negroes have been in Walmart in freaking pajama pants. That started with females. You see what I'm saying? So all we're saying is society has slowly and methodically, we're not blaming anybody, because we're not going, black women did this, black fathers did that. All we're saying, we've been saying from the beginning, is that society, and y'all saying the same thing, but it started out saying, well, the black father's this, black father's that. But what I hear y'all saying society. I don't take it personally, because I know I ain't did none of that. So I'm saying, when we begin to if I allow my son to walk switching, right? Something that's feminine. Let's not try to act like it's great. That's feminine. If I allow him to start dressing like a female, that's feminine. Because, I mean, I ain't even got to get biblical. We could get scientific and be like, look, I don't care what you identify as, what were you made as? Meaning, your chromosomes, your DNA, you cannot change. You XX. You can act like a man all you want to. You can look like a man all you want to. You can get your coochie moved out of your urethra or whatever, out of your pelvic area, and get a ding put in there.
I can go to the biology terminology.
Your blood still shows you're a female. Man, you can tuck your little ding-a-ling back. You can get it chopped off. You can get some, you know what I mean? You still a male. I don't care what it is. So all this free thinking, free this, free that. Yeah, I'm supportive. You think how you want to think, but don't think that you're going to make me think how you think. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to accept.
But you know what, Drill? That goes back to my first point, which is, you know, we have our fundamental thoughts, ethics, morals, and values. And you have people now who are questioning that. You know, the same way that you said, you know, you're not just gonna let your son walk around switching, right? There is a free thinker. I mean, they got TV shows now. There's a free thinker that's gonna come up and say, "But that's who he is." You know, that's who that person is. So there's this idea of, I no longer want to be identified by what you think I am. You say I'm a man. You say that I'm heterosexual. You say this, you say that. And you have a lot of these free thinkers who are dismantling that. They're coming up with all of these cisgender, listen,
it is.
I don't even know all of it.
It is confusing.
I do agree that no matter how you feel on inside, it does not change science. However, there is this, you know, this, man, that's a deep conversation.
It is. So here,
back in, because I feel like I want to address some of the earlier things that Jarrell said, because let's not go too far to the right, because some of this stuff can be discussed without going to the extremes of society. Some of this stuff that you said would fit without going to the extreme, right? So,
like what?
I mean, like you were talking about the way that women dressed and with the skinny jeans and stuff. I think that's just been an evolution. I remember back in the day, fucking The Message, African Barbarian, them tight ass leather pants, them motherfuckers was wearing back then.
Hey, they were some thick niggas. though. Come on, man. You know, they were some thick niggas.
I don't think this is just a fashion trend that's just coming back around, and men were wearing it. Back then, you know what I'm saying?
You heard me, Nikki.
I don't think tight ass leather. No, had on a whole tight leather jumpsuit on.
But to be honest, Tiff, the reason that even if you talk about it being a fashion trend, is to accentuate or I'm saying it the right way. Accentuate like certain qualities. So when women wear tight clothes, right, they're trying to show off a particular body part or become show off a particular body part. It was. Yeah, that's what they were. Well, we know what African Bambaataa had problems with, right?
You know, right? You know what? If we look back at fashion, though, it started as Euro cut, right? So Euro cut was a little, little
more form fitting,
right? Form fitting. Now they went from Euro cut to straight skinny jeans.
Right.
That's nothing. You can't get no skinny jeans over in Europe. It's Euro cut. So now over here, they making it seem like tight jeans is the thing. You know what I mean? And now, like I said, more guys getting their hair and nails done than women. Yeah. So now y'all asking, but then y'all complain about the male.
Go ahead.
Is that too extreme? No, I'm saying, is that too extreme?
No, but those are the things that I want to address. I mean, and I think that's kind of what we getting at. Like, I think, like you said, you grew up with a very masculine father, and so that's what you know.
I mean,
he's saying he's a masculine man, not that he grew up with a father. Okay.
Right.
I actually grew up with a masculine mother.
Interesting. So that's another conversation, another thing, right? So, and Shay, I get you on that. Right. So what I'm saying is though that it's gonna be very hard when you have those fundamental, like Nikki keeps saying. I think it's kind of hard for y'all to like grasp it. It's just kind of like the same thing. To be honest with you, on why you get so much pushback from a lot of white people when we get to talking about fixing, you changing shit when it comes to racism and doing these things to police, because these things have been in place for so long, and they like, this is what it's like to be white, and it's like, you know, we look at it as racist, but no, they just trying to stand it because that's all they've known, and all you've known is this is the picture and the attributes that they gave to masculinity, and we should break that down. Like, it don't have to. And like I said, I don't want to go extreme. I'm not talking about that. That's another conversation when you get to talking about transgender and stuff like that. I'm not talking about that. And I'm even talking about having your son switch. I'm just talking about
breaking down the norms. White people in general are comfortable in the space that they're in, and then they've just been ignorant to some things.
It's not so much that they're racist. You know, when I'm really digging and researching this, it's not so much that some are definitely racist, obviously, but some, it's not that. It's just that they've been comfortable because the society from the time they built this country has been built on their supremacy.
Elitism, that's all it is.
They've made it very comfortable for them, and now you're asking us to disrupt that comfort. It's the same thing that's going on with this masculinity conversation. It's almost identical.
No,
I think that's what Nikki's been trying to say.
Right, it's kind of identical, but what I'm trying to say from a male's perspective is that I get it. I understand. I understand what you're going. I understand what it is that you're saying. I understand what disruption does to norms. Right, when you shake a house that has never been shaken, it wasn't built to be shooken or shook, then yeah, there's gonna be some challenges, and I understand that. But as a masculine man, I think part of my job is to have conversations and be open with listening to you and truly hearing you and trying to make a change in terms of the way that I act. Right. And so there's an idea of toxic masculinity, but then and we feel like there's an attack on masculinity to get rid of it. Right? To not have it, to break it down to the smallest part that it doesn't exist anymore. And when you do that, what then happens to us? Right? So here's an example. Maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, Charlize Theron had adopted a kid, right? A little boy, right? Oh, yeah. The little boy was probably 3 or 4 at the time. Little boy told her that he wanted to wear a dress or a skirt or dress like a girl. Mm-hmm. She allowed him to do that, right? We live in a society now where that is acceptable, right? Mm-hmm. That to allow him to do that, right? So it's like, because we're trying to dismantle masculinity, it's like, okay, whatever it takes. Yeah, it's okay for him to wear a dress. Why? Dresses weren't made for women. It's not particularly feminine or masculine. He can just wear a dress. I didn't want to go but that's what it is. If we don't go to the extremes, what happens is that you'll look back 10 years and you'll be like, well, what happened to masculinity? Right? Because it's all these subtle.
If we have a whole society where we're pretty much we're not masculine. The men are no more masculine. Right. We're passive. We're not saying that all women are passive or whatever. We're just saying that the men are not tough, basically. Right. You know what I'm saying? So y'all asking us to fight for y'all, but we're asking y'all to. Well, we're not asking y'all. We're kind of saying, hey, but society is getting. We're trying to support each other. Now we support Black women. If a Black man out there don't support a Black woman, he need to be smacked upside his head because he came from one. This is just the dumbest ideology I've ever heard. Right. You know what I mean? So we're not ever coming at femininity. We're not coming at free thinking or anything like that. All we're saying is look at what they're subtly trying to do. Yeah. They're trying to subtly almost cut us off. Yeah. You know what I mean? While the world is watching, while the world is.
Go ahead.
Who are they?
Yeah, go ahead.
Nikki, hold on. I want Jarrell to answer. I want to know who they is, because if they're doing this to all men, it's not just.
Well, we've shown one example in the About Us, or what we believe, what he already read, and it's not that idea did not come from. I don't think they started that. You know what I mean? The two young females. I'm saying it had been embedded in them subtly over years by society. Now you want to ask specifically who society is? The real ones who run the world. The men, Black men, haven't been standing in control. We know that. If Black men were in control, y'all would have been in control with us.
White men are trying to remove masculinity.
Those who actually have an elitism way of thinking. Right. Those are the ones who we consider racist because it's their way, and when we're inferior to their way. You understand? We're not even,
I feel like we're moving into a
worthy
conversation.
Yeah, no, we're gonna get away from that one. Go ahead, Nick.
to ask this question because you're saying it, and I want to be clear.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would be a good question to ask. What do you two gentlemen define masculinity as? Because it seems like you're saying masculinity is to be a man.
I think they're one. I absolutely think it's one in the same.
Yeah.
That's a requirement.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, seriously, but what does masculinity mean for you two? For real,
I think masculinity represents a strength, a courage, and a protective nature about the people and things we decide to bring into our house, right? So there's not into our house, but into our circle, right? So there's a nature and accountability and responsibility that I believe a masculine man is supposed to stand up. And I'm not just talking about roles and taking out the garbage. I am saying truly stepping up and being the leader of the household. And sometimes being a leader means that you have to follow, right? There are things that I absolutely am worse at than my wife. And being a good leader would require that I said, babe, you're better at this than me. For us to succeed, I need for you to get out in front and do that. And I understand in the past that it was harder, men thought differently, and so forth and so on. But when it comes to being masculine, I think that those are all attributes. It's not. I don't consider a man that hits a woman over the head, and be abusive, verbally or physically, as a masculine feature. I do, and if you want to get really kind of,
that's toxic masculinity right there.
Yeah, I mean that. I would call it, yeah. It's not even masculine. It is something else that is going on there, and I wouldn't categorize it as that. I would say that Chris, like the Chris Brown situation, right, and Rihanna, he was a product of seeing that growing up in his household. Doesn't mean that it was masculine and it wasn't feminine. It was bad behavior, right? And so when you begin to tie that thing to masculinity and then you put toxic next to masculinity, people start to have these conversations. And Nikki, to your point, people associate, it's almost like a synonym. People associate masculinity with men. And so when you hear that word, you don't think of a female immediately, you think of a man. And so now the word of the day is toxic masculinity. And so when you do that, it's like, okay, nope, you're being toxic. And every little thing, if I was to walk up to Charlize Theron and say, what you're doing is kind of sort of child abuse, in my opinion. Right? He's a 3-year-old boy. How does he know, like, what he really wants to?
And she's going to tell you he's exploring. Now, I'm not saying it's right, but I'm just telling you, just based off of like the number of conversations I've had, I've struggled with understanding certain things. I have. So I guess when I hear you say that the synonym masculine and man is together, that just more so brings me to tell you that, again, we're back at masculinity being redefined. I will agree with you that is occurring right now, that they are changing. They're trying to change, not just Black Lives Matter, but the world that we live in is definitely challenging what masculinity is and who is the bearer of it. And they're saying that the bearer is not just a man. Now, is that right or wrong? I mean, that's up for debate.
Right. No, it's still... I hear what you're saying.
What I think is being done.
But I think to that point, it's like don't run from it. If you are who you are, your masculine characteristics, if that is becoming of most men on that, accept it. And we'll have to accept it the same way. If that's what naturally that men are inclined to do, like if you put a basketball down in front of a 4-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl, I guarantee you naturally, without any interaction with anybody else, they've never seen a ball. The boy and the girl are going to have two completely different, well, actually, let me take that back. Not the ball. Put a chair in front of a boy and a girl, right? Chances are that 4-year-old boy is going to run, step on top of that chair, jump, and try to fly and be Superman. Ain't nobody told him to be Superman. Ain't nobody telling him to defy gravity. Chances are, and these are my opinions and assumptions. I haven't tested this out scientifically, but this is what I believe. Chances are you sit that chair down, the girl is probably more than likely going to sit down. And I'm not saying that there's something wrong that if the girl jumps on the chair and does what I think a boy would do, it would shock me, right? It would definitely shock me. But my thoughts is that genetically we are built to complement each other and not be the same, right? And so I get it. There are some men that have some feminine qualities. Nothing wrong with it as long as it's not, in my opinion, too much to the right, right? Because then you have some questions. How do you exist in a household? You can be who you want to be, but it's just it's challenging. We have some questions, or I'll have some questions. But it is what it is when it comes to you being feminine and you being masculine. If you say those are your characteristics, own it. That's typically what a man would do. Okay, that's who you are.
I think along with that also comes with a lot of this conversation as far as the man being masculine or whatever. Even if you go back to the Bible that a lot of religious folks use, they use the scripture the man is the head and all this type of stuff, which is.
You're not religious.
I'm not religious, no. But I'll say that particular scripture has been twisted for over 1,000 years. In this household that I live in, there is no head per se. Our head is God. So there is no I run this and she run that, or she got to run stuff by me or whatever. There's a mutual respect and a mutual inclusive relationship. So for instance, the other day my daughter came. She came to me. She tried to get me in trouble, right? So she come to me. She say, Dad, can I do this, that, and the other? I said, yeah, baby girl, I got you. She said, could you go downstairs and tell Mom?
Wait.
No. Oh, I see what this is.
Nope.
So you already spoke to your mama. She said no. So now you're trying to get me. Can you just go down there and tell her? So I go down there. I go down to the basement. Baby, hey, she gonna do this, that, and the other. She said, no, she ain't. I said, well, let's go back upstairs, man. we go back upstairs. I had to have a sit down with my daughter and say, baby, I fought for you and I lost.
Right. That's a matriarchal practice, Tiffany, just so you know.
As masculine as I am, I ain't stupid. You know what I'm saying? I think the lesson behind that is that it doesn't matter. I know masculinity has also been, as you guys have so eloquently spoken about tonight. It has been over the years been linked with that patriarchal ideal that the men run the world, right? Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I'm gonna be straight up. I think men are stupid. You know what I'm saying? Me being included, because if we go back to our kids, to that example, raising kids, I got 3 boys, 1 girl, right? Even watching other girls getting raised, girls are way smarter. We noticed in school that girls are smarter than boys. I don't care what the grades say. Girls are they get it more. The females just kind of adapt more. They're more advanced.
Yeah, we jumping off the chair, they sitting down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we slow.
No, we jumping off that chair. Y'all sitting down. We worried about how to fly. Y'all worried about
what y'all supposed to do. So imagine those two extremes though coming together, right, and then working together.
Exactly.
How strength is behind it. So what we're trying to say is not to dismiss anybody's ideas tonight. What we're trying to say is at the end of the day, Black woman, Black man, let's come together and we can really be powerful. Even though they tried to separate us, they tried to do all this, that, and the other. You believe this, you do that, you live like this, who cares? Let's come together and then we can make a real movement. That's all we're saying.
I think pushing 1,000%. I think pushing podcasts like this and you two gentlemen doing what you're doing for the community of men is more of what we need. Everybody has a movement. The fathers need a movement. You have to join the fight. If you want to be listed, if you want to be counted these days, you got to start a revolution. And it's not like you have fathers joining you, fathers just joining together to help fathers be better fathers or help men become fathers. Because at the end of the day, we still have generations that are being born into single family homes, and this is going to continue to perpetuate until you have a movement that pushes fathers back in the family by any means necessary. It's no longer okay for fathers just to be like, well, I tried and the judge wouldn't let me. Like it's
all
not
these
okay
excuses, right?
Because it's so many babies depending on you. And if fathers are supposed to be in the family and revered as necessity, then you have to be there, because it's not just women telling these stories. Your children are telling these stories, and they're telling them to people like me, and they're traumatized by it. You know what I mean? So when you have fathers like yourselves, you guys gotta create your own movement and be counted. And you gotta get your movement.
Right. And Terrell, I got kicked off earlier, but I wanted to respond to what you said. Don't allow that verbiage, that language that you saw to turn you away from BLM. Don't let it, because I know you mentioned something that if it goes into a different area, like if you wanted to put funding behind it, maybe you might decide that you don't want to. I think they have been very clear with their actions, because we always say actions speak louder than words, right? Mm-hmm. So we can sit down and maybe even get them to have a conversation about that language and even possibly change that language. Mm-hmm. But they have been very clear with their actions that they're all about Black men. I mean, I haven't seen them put their name behind anything else at this point. So look at that before it turns you, before it gets to a point where it's going to turn you completely off.
Yeah, no, I'm not personally completely turned off. I find some of the language associated with it problematic, right? And I think that's just a part of it. It's a relatively new organization, and I imagine that it's definitely gonna change. And I don't know what's gonna happen in the future, but you're right. There has been, at least at face value, they have stood out in the Black Lives Matter movement. At the end of the day, if that what came out of the organization, that in and of itself was a big step, right? It has definitely put faces and voices to the pain and suffering that we've endured for a very long time. So I am eternally grateful for that, right? Because at the end of the day, my boys are going to have to stand behind the Black Lives Matter movement, because they are that, right? And so to Nikki's point, even, it's part of the first step is for me to make sure that I raise two proud masculine boys that want to have, if they want to have families, that they accept the responsibility of that. And that starts not just with having kids, it starts with the person you choose to have kids with, right? Mm-hmm. In all of that, and making some solid decisions about that, so that the generation after us can have greater unity and greater accountability amongst themselves. And then we can begin to definitely start spreading out, right? So part of my challenge is, like, I have these two boys and I'm still trying to figure it out as well. I don't have it all figured out myself. Before I start reaching out into, putting my tentacles all out in the other, there are certain things that I would love to react to and have some advice for, but primary focus is like getting my children and making sure my household is fine. I can do multiple things. That's not a big deal, but it's still me making sure that I do what's necessary and right for me and mine as well. Right. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Both of you are right. When it comes to, cut it out. So what I'd like to ask, and you were kind of alluding to that, so we're getting to a place to where it's, we're about to wrap up, and it's been a wonderful conversation.
Yes.
What I wish we had, it wasn't 7 or 8:30 on a Sunday night. I wish it was a little earlier, and we can go a little bit longer. Maybe we'll come back and do a part 2. But
that would be amazing.
Yeah, what I kind of would like to hear from the two of you, what do men, what can we do? It can be one thing or it can be 2 or 3. What are some of the things that we can do? And I'm growing, trying to get away from the whole ally thing, like to be an ally for women that definitely still obviously support us, but in your mind where it's like you're having this conversation with us and you feel like it's going in one ear and out the other when it comes to patriarchal things, or how we kind of take things from that perspective. Like
the main thing is what we're doing right here, right now. We're having conversations and we're all soaking it in, and everybody's getting their perspective heard. That's number one. I think when you hear a lot of women say we need protection, it's been more on that angle, not physical protection, but when you seeing us being disrespected, when you're seeing us being devalued, when we're talking about the issues that we specifically deal with, listening and actually having our back and supporting us. that's for me. That's all I can ask for.
Yeah, I ditto that. I also think that it's important that men corral other men and begin to think of ways to support women together collectively. You can't always look for the source to tell you how to help them. Like, some women might not know how to tell you, or they might not know what to say as far as how to verbalize what support they need or what they want from you. Not every woman is going to do that. So I think that it takes initiative on the man's side to get men together and to prompt each other. Like, how could we be more supportive of our women? How could we let our women know that we do have their back? Or that, how do I let my wife know that I appreciate her? Some of those same things that you probably practice, you both practice in your marriage, are conversations that you could have with men who are not married to just help check them. I think the idea of men checking each other and being okay with being checked, because you know that it's going to make you better. And it's not just going to make you better as a father, but it's going to make you a better man. It's going to make you a better person. And it's going to make you better connected to the Black community. You know what I mean? So I say continue to do these podcasts and corral the men. Continue conversations of, like, you know, what can we do? What can we do for our babies? What can we do to be better fathers, to be better men, to be better partners, you know, to be better listeners? How do we stop, you know, our women from feeling how they feel? Because that number is growing. And unless men get in front of it, unfortunately, masculinity is going to be wiped out. It really is, you know. And
all right, nuke Nikki. Nuke.
I was trying to, but I'm just saying.
Hey.
And I just want to thank you guys for creating this safe space for us to talk about this. I feel very, very comfortable. And that's an additional thing, like creating these safe spaces for women, because we don't have a lot of them to talk about this. So I really appreciate this. This has been a very, very hard one.
Man, we really appreciate y'all lending the time and you know what I mean, giving y'all thoughts. And I mean, this was a really dope. When Terrell came up with the idea, like, man, what you think about? I was like, let's do it. Right. Like, we need. Telling you, we need some other realness, you know what I mean? And we knew we was gonna get it from y'all. So I'm telling you, I'm excited right now. You know what I mean? I'm gonna just say one thing, Nikki. We do have a group of guys that were getting together, but now they're kind of obsolete. That will get together and be like, yo, Shorty needs some new shoes. Shorty need a hair done. They were called pimps and sugar daddies. So.
Oh my
God. Pimps, sugar daddies. What up?
Why would you bring up pimps? Out of all the moments you talk about pimps, you want to do that now?
Like, damn, y'all have an organization.
Hey, really look at this, because when I said that, you should have saw Tiffany's face.
I was even like, wait a minute, where is he going?
Why he told me about
it? What are we doing? What did I miss?
I wish I would have took a picture of that, man. Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's recorded. I got it. I can replay
it. Man, you got to send me a screenshot of that, boy.
Yeah.
I mean, that. Man.
And on that note, this is a perfect way. A perfect way to absolutely end a great show. We're definitely going to have to figure out a way to come back and further this conversation, and maybe it's a larger panel or a group conversation so we can get more input.
I love it. You know, we can talk about this about anything. You know, so
right.
So shout out to part of my ugly podcast.
Yeah.
Hey, Nikki, you one of the dope photographers I've ever. Man or female, whatever.
Right.
Whoever I said what I said, she the dopest.
Right.
Chi-Town stand up, West Side stand up. Nick stand.
She ain't from out west. She a South Side.
I know. She off Damon.
Hey, I'm off Damon all day, but I'm an honorary West Sider.
Right. No, absolutely appreciate you guys for joining.
Thank you.
We'll catch up with y'all the next time. Thank you.